Hi, I am Annmarie, and I am a rheumatoid arthritis support coach, also Pearl's client. I am so excited to share with Pearl today.
Hey everybody, this is Pearl Chiarenza. Welcome back to another episode of Conversations with Pearl. And today's a fun day because I actually get to bring you education, but I also get to talk about what I do because our guest is actually a client of mine, but an expert in her coaching field of rheumatoid arthritis. So I want to introduce you to Annmarie Entner. She is a certified life coach who specializes in working with women who have rheumatoid arthritis. Having personal experience with this condition, Annmarie is passionate about empowering and supporting individuals on their journey of self-discovery and personal growth. She believes in embracing pain as a catalyst for personal development and sees challenges as a stepping stones towards defining your path in life. Outside of her career as a life coach, Annmarie is a loving mother, devoted wife, and a proud grandmother. She values family and finds joy in nurturing relationships and creating lasting memories with loved ones. With her compassionate and empathetic approach, Annmarie helps her clients let go of what has held them back and paves the way for positive transformation and renewed mental fitness. If you're looking for guidance, support, and a partner in your personal development journey, Annmarie is going to be your trusted ally. Her expertise as a certified life coach, coupled with her experience with rheumatoid arthritis and trauma survivor, makes her well equipped to help you overcome obstacles and achieving a fulfilling life. And I want to say before she even unmutes herself to come on here that I'm a proud mama coach for all her growth she's had over the last year and a half we've been working together. And Annmarie, welcome to the show.
Oh, Pearl, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I can't believe we're finally making this happen. We've been trying to do this together for so long, you guys. Our schedules keep messing up and things happen, but we're finally here together. So, Annmarie, one of the things I always like to do is kind of take us back in time, right? Take that backward time. And I know your story, so you share whatever you're comfortable sharing. But if you could think back when you were a little girl and you thought about what I want to be when I grow up, right? Like I know for me, when I was a little girl, I wanted to be a teacher, but I never had the guidance through my schooling in high school to take the next step. Where I went to school, it wasn't really big on colleges, so it didn't have the guidance to go, oh, this is how you can go to school. These are the grants you can get, things like that. We lack that where I went to school. So I didn't necessarily go to school and become that teacher. But my life has taken a journey that today, as a coach, I am teaching and empowering and paying forward. So take us back to when you were that little girl. What was that for you that you wanted I want to grow up and I want to be? And how does that compare to what you're doing today?
Wow. So that just automatically pops in my head. I always wanted to be a writer, and tell stories, make up stories or whatever it was. And in school, I would just make up these things, these little short stories. And I had this one teacher, and I think her name was Mrs. Regan. And I made some weird story up about Abe Lincoln. And she's like, that's not how it went. That's not history. And, you know, she shut me up. I was probably about, I don't know, how old are you in sixth grade? 12, 13, something like that, right? So yeah, that kind of squashed me. And I had already been struggling in school. So it is one of many that had quieted my voice along my journey. I wouldn't say it's my first, but it is definitely one that if I look at my path that I am on today, is sort of coming full circle.
So do you want to tell everybody why it's kind of full circle?
So in October, I am going to be in Breaking the Silence, Voices of Survivors, Volume 2 with Michelle Jewsbury. And I always thought when I'd write the story, I would come from a place of anger and just bitter, and it would just flow out of me. But since I think it's over a year and a half that we've been working together, I have found a lot of forgiveness and compassion and grace for who have hurt me in my past. And it goes from family members to people that were my friends and strangers. And um, that I was able to eventually forgive myself. And when I listen to what I wrote out loud, I am so proud of myself. And I wish I could meet that woman again, Mrs. Regan, and be like, hey, look at that. You know, 40 some odd years later, I am doing exactly what I wanted to do. It's a chapter, it's a beginning, it is a stepping stone, which is what I teach. I teach stepping stones to move forward. And I couldn't be more proud of myself, especially having the guidance and care of you and Michelle to help me go forward.
And I want to say, like, and it's interesting how we have these life experiences where we go back and those people can make pivotal comments, actions that can change our lives. And I talk about that often, like especially with my kids, their friends and stuff. They're now growing into becoming these parents and stuff. And I've said it here on the show before. What we say to our kids, it really impacts them going forward. If you tell them they're not good enough or go stand in the corner, they're going to think they don't have that voice, or whatever those words you put out to them, they're powerful. I remember, one time Matt, I'll never forget the day. Matt was sitting in a chair. We were struggling with some behavior at school, some of the people he was hanging out with. And I remember I said certain words to him, a sentence. And if he was still here today, he'd say, "You said this on this chair, and it impacted me the rest of my life." And I was like, oh man, you don't, because sometimes as parents, we get so drastic. We're like, how can I get through to them? Right. So it's really important. I'm glad you brought that. So for our listeners, like, think before you speak. If you are somebody who is teaching with kids, like Annmarie gave the example of her teacher, think before you say, "Oh, you can't do that." I remember, if my friend Krista's listening, I remember her sharing the story that her son, Sean, he wanted to be a football player, right? So in third grade, the teacher's like, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And the teacher's like, he says, "I want to be, a football player." And the teacher's like, "That will never happen." It's like,
Mm.
why are you trying to squash his dream, right? So it's so impactful. Even if you're a teacher listening, please remember that. Always, help them grow that. Don't disenfranchise or disenchant. I can't think of the word, but don't take.
Disenchant.
Thank you. It was a big word for me to say,
I
Annmarie. Thank you
know.
very much. But don't do that, because it makes a difference. And I want to say too, let's talk about the book for a second. I remember when you first went on this journey of writing it, and you said it too. So let's build on that for a minute. You talked about how you were doing it from a point of anger. And I remember, like, you and I have been working, you've grown so much on working through, the stuff you've gone through as a child and growing up as a young single mom, a caregiver to not just your dad, but your mom and now your mother-in-law. I remember, like, when we first met, all that, like, it was just so much. And like, to help you hone in, like, we really start honing in on what does Annmarie want. But I remember when you last September, it'll be a year ago this September, and when you met Michelle, you were at my retreat, and you guys went off to the beach, you had a conversation, and you came back here and do the story. And I remember when you first started it, you were coming from a place of anger. You were coming from a place
Absolutely.
of, can I, this is how I feel. And I remember, was it not even 2 months ago? I remember Michelle and I were talking, and you were saying to me, "You have to turn in your chapter." She said, "Emery says turn in a chapter." And I called you, I'm like, "Okay, what's going on? I'm calling as your coach now, not your friend. Why haven't you turned in your chapter?" And you're like, "I don't know what to do. I'm not angry anymore. I don't think I need to do the book." And what did I say to you?
Yes, you do.
And why did I say you had to do it?
Because someone needs to hear what transformation that I've had. And my voice matters still, even though I've worked through all of the angst and bitterness. And it softened me. Not that I was hard, but I softened myself, how hard I am on me. And I think that's the biggest growth that I've had this year. Lord knows I like to get things perfect. I am a Virgo, and I am a people working on being a better not people pleaser, which I do with you also. But yeah, I think giving myself not to be so hard has become my next part of my journey.
And I think too, would you agree? Like, when we were talking too about doing this book, it was like, that's part of the story. It's like,
Mm.
the story is, and those that are listening, you can go through trauma. Absolutely. And you've got to process that trauma. Part of the process, like the anger, the grief, the processing through all that. And you and I have been working on that for like the last year and a half. And a really amazing thing is, like, you were able to, you've coming through, you're healing, doing the healing that's necessary for you to grow. And I remember saying to you, that's part of why, another reason why you have to tell the story. So not only so people hear your story, but people can see that you can heal. You don't have to let the trauma lock you in or keep you in a jail cell. You can, it's interesting. We're talking about this. We're recording this today, and just happened today, which is August 1st is when we're recording this. Michelle, you guys have the book coming out in October, and I don't even know if you've seen it, but locally they did a huge local piece on this book. There was
Yes,
a beautiful local news on the book, and one of the things she talked about in there is like the healing, that it doesn't have to mean that you have to let that trauma hold you back. Like, be empowered to do something with it. And what you're doing and paying it forward and sharing your story, those that are listening, if you're hearing us or you're watching us, everybody has a story, and it's so important that you share the story and not keep it to even if you think nobody's going to care, you could touch the life of one person. So I would say to you, like I said to Annmarie, what if you change the life of just one person? Is it worth it? And what did you say?
absolutely.
Right. So
Absolutely. And
yeah.
I think maybe because, and I know I say absolutely, completely, and wholeheartedly, is because I didn't have that. This wasn't spoken about. It was very shameful. Some of the heinous acts that have happened to me. Um, and I did therapy. I did 25, I think maybe even 30 years. I did a lot of therapy, and I knew why it happened, where it happened, and I forgave them, but I didn't give them the compassion and grace at that time. Um, During this process, I gave them that, and I gave myself that and forgiveness, which was um, the biggest weight I've ever let off my chest. It was a weight lifted.
And it's so it's important, like forgiveness, for the others. It's so important part of our healing. It doesn't mean you're going to forget, but you can certainly forgive, because that's part of our healing. It's like my journey with my dad being, I grew up a daddy's girl, and I adored I was such a daddy's girl. When he came home from the service from being at war, he had a mustache. He had to shave his mustache because I didn't believe it was him, right? And then I was like, oh, that's my dad, right? So, and then as I adopted Matthew, when we adopted Matt, and Matt became, a young adult, my dad's races towards Matthew's mixed race started coming out. So and what the things that he did and everything, I basically divorced my parents because of it. But I had to forgive him. I won't forget, but I had to forgive him so that I could forgive myself for not catching it, right? For being like, where was I showing up? How as a mom did I not? How as a mom and a husband and wife, how did mother and father, how did we, when we did our list, like we literally did a list, Annmarie, it says, here are the people that we are concerned with in our circle that may not be accepting. Are we okay that they're not going to be in our lives because they won't accept? We were 100% accepting Matthew, but are we okay with them being out of our lives? And they were all yeses. And the ones that we never ever thought that would be the one, my father was on that list. We never thought he'd be that way. And when it happened, it's like, this is not okay, And so forgive, yes. Forget, you don't have to forget, but you don't also have to let it keep you held back from moving forward.
Yeah, and I think that's the part that held me back for a long time, was
Right.
just not forgiving, and not even, it was just forgiving me, not understanding that this isn't something to be ashamed of, not to be feel guilty over. You know, I didn't know any better. You know, I once did uh I had a therapist that she actually was so now I'm having a hard time. A psychologist who had me sit on the couch in the whole 9 yards, head on the pillows, and you know, had me then once write about letters to everybody. And I wrote multiple letters to everybody, especially the ones that really hurt me the most, which were my family members. And I wrote from, now I'm an adult, I'm in my 40s. I'm an adult writing from a 15-year-old perspective. And she had me read it back. And, that again, I was hearing my own voice, but hearing it from a child's voice. I wrote this chapter in this book from an adult healed version.
And I've watched you. So those who don't know, I mean, like Annmarie said earlier, we've been working together a year and a half, and I've watched her blossom into this healed person. I've watched her go from so many hats she was wearing and people pleasing galore and now she's finding harmony in her life. And as like I said, as a proud mama coach, we've become friends as well, but I'm so proud of all the work you're doing and what you're going into. And I want to talk about the work that you're doing. So tell us your journey about rheumatoid arthritis. Walk us through the first part when I came on, and we'll talk about what that led you to start coaching about it today.
So I got diagnosed in 2019, right before COVID. So I had been training the year prior. I had decided in early 2019 I was going to do a half marathon. And I had already done a bunch of 5Ks, and I did one 10K, and I was like, I can do this. I was part of a running group, and um, just plugging at it, not losing weight, but struggling. And I do mean struggling and sucking it up. It's this will all come for fruition when you hear the end of this, but I was sucking it all up like, Annmarie, what's wrong with you? Just, it's just pain, just suck it up. And I ended up having foot surgery because my foot went numb, and they've removed a rheumatoid nodule, and I had gotten that through a pathology report, which crushed me. I remember thinking like, WTF, like what's this all about? And this was just supposed to be, like a bone spur, and it wasn't. I literally went from my life is over in a second to working on my mindset with Pearl and another woman also, but mainly I realized that I didn't want to be my disease. I didn't want to be the RA victim. And I went on a bunch of forums, and I tried to get support, and I wasn't hearing what I needed. I needed encouragement to move forward, to understand that the circumstances I have RA, not that it's who I am. And I worked through that really diligently and changed my mindset. And I'm not perfect by any means. I mean, I make mistakes daily. Um, but I do know that in the process, I learned that I can do anything, and I don't need to suck it up. You know, um, the suck it up generation. If I say that, we should all know that I'm part of the Gen X setter generation. Our parents were like, throw mud on it. It's not a big deal. Lift up the carpet. It's not there. And I don't blame them for that. That's probably how they were raised. But the Gen Xers wear that with like it's a body armor, and it's a medal. To me, it's not a medal because I waited way too long to get looked at. I was recently looking at I'm in a flare now, and I was trying to remember the last time I really, like, the first time I'd ever felt this, and I was probably in my early 30s, and did nothing about it because, once again, I sucked it up. And of course I could add the buttercup after it because that all goes together. I don't suck anything up anymore. I address it, and I marinate on it a little bit. And the biggest work that I've done is that if it happens to me now, I allow it to be there. I give myself time. And after that time, it's what I do afterwards. I give myself the grace, the compassion to feel this sucks. I can't believe it's happening again. But what do I do after I've acknowledged all those feelings? I take action. I can either stay in the wallow, the woe is me, or I can move forward. And my moving forward is one step at a time. I journal. I reach out to people. I reach out to Pearl constantly, but to me, it's very much being present and not shoving it under the carpet and saying, suck it up.
And I think that you brought up a lot of good points here. So I like, first of all, let's start with you didn't want to be the disease. So many times we take on what's either a health issue, we take on what's happening in our family. Like you talk about being a people pleasing, we take it on. We want to fix everybody. We want to take care of it. We want to take it away from them. We want to hold on to it for them. And you're right. And it holds us back. And that was one of the things you and I worked on together.
Mm-hmm.
It was like overcoming that, being like, let go. You can't fix everything. Somebody's going to fall and scrape their knee. You're going to have a flare. You got to take time for you because guess what? If you're not here tomorrow, who's going to take care of them anyways, right? Somebody's going to step up. It doesn't have to be you all the time. But I like what you said. You didn't want to be the disease. And so if you're listening to us, You don't have to be the circumstance that you have, whether it's your health, like Annmarie sharing with the disease, or whether it's, a circumstance that's happening in your family, at work. You don't have to take that on. You can choose you first. You can choose to take steps, as Annmarie has done, and we're gonna get to that some more here, that when things come up, how you respond is what's going to help you work through it. It's what's going to help bring harmony into your life, which is something I talk about all the time with Annmarie, is how do you want harmony to be in your life? If you want to own it and help everybody do it, just be prepared to give up harmony. Be prepared to be stressed out. Be prepared to not be happy. And that's not what Annmarie wanted, And so we work through that. And so we're going to talk more about that. But you talked about, like, when a flare comes up. Let's talk about what a flare is for those who don't know, are not familiar with rheumatoid. Explain first what is rheumatoid arthritis, and then explain a flare, and then I'm going to ask you a follow-up question.
Okay, so rheumatoid arthritis is an autoimmune disease that attacks your body, and it can attack any part of your body. Most people know it as arthritis, where it attacks their hands, their feet, their knees, their shoulders. It can affect and attack your skin, your lungs, your liver, any part of your body. I mean, it's non-discriminatory as far as that's concerned. So for me, and what I teach is that this is normal. We're going to have this the rest of our lives. So, which you taught me, the term must, that we must make this a priority for ourselves, that when we're in a flare, to take that break before we start the day, just to get our mind in alignment for what we have to do, whether it's I can get rid of a couple of things in my schedule, or I'm not going to be writing, I'm not going to be typing. I do a little bit more. I don't do this enough. I do need to just dictate it into my phone when I have ideas or something of that sort. But I do a body scan, especially more now that I'm in a flare, and it's affecting my feet. It's just not my hands right now. So my first thing is I start from my head and I breathe. And in each section, like, I feel my hair, I feel my nose, my chin, my breath. It starts to slow. I feel my chest go up and down. And I just try to see where the pain is, and I go all the way down to my feet. But when I get to my feet, I bend my knees up to see if the pressure of me putting them on the bed is a lot. And sometimes yes, and sometimes no. This morning it was a yes, and I go to a stretch therapist to help me, to keep me mobile. But if I didn't go today, I would have stuck my feet in hot water to loosen them up, and then put ice on them. Those are my go-tos. Those are especially when I'm in a flare. I experience brain fog, which is huge, where I can't finish sentences, or I become very people use the expression of, deer in the headlights. I don't know if I look like that, but I certainly feel like that, that I lose that train of thought. And it used to frustrate me. And now I accept it well, this is what it is. We accept people with dementia. We accept that this is what happens, and it's part of growing old. Well, this is part of the disease, and the more I would fight it, the more I would experience it. So the more I embrace it, I've noticed it's less, especially while I'm in a flare. I'm looking at the foods that I'm eating. I do your OPC3. I'm doing my vitamin D and 3 in the K. I mean, I am definitely much more on top of everything. I get scheduled, like, okay, I'm up, I got to go do. So I become a little bit more diligent, opposed to, I have an hour to get it done. I'm getting up and doing it immediately. And that's the most I've ever done in my life as far as being me first.
Sorry, I was on mute.
Oh, the technical difficulties today. It's all great.
So I like what you said. You do a body scan. I love that you talk about body scan, and I think it's important that even if you don't have an autoimmune, if you're not dealing with like what Annmarie's talking about, RA or any kind of other challenges, doing a body scan of your body is so important because especially if you can start the day off like that, because I believe it kind of is like, so Annmarie talked about PQ, which we'll talk about in just a second, but it's a great way to kind of ground yourself to start your day, right? It's a great way to be like, oh, today I'm feeling this. So, let me try to process what I need to process. Like for me, like grief, like I wake up in the morning, those who've been on here following me and listening to our Conversation with Pro episodes know that we lost our oldest son. It was 2 years ago, July, that we lost Matthew. And our younger son is getting married in October, Nate. And so processing all the severe sadness and the happiness, it's like it can be hard some days because, and some people on here go, well, you know, believe it or not, comments are made about, well, you should be happy you still have one here, or you should be happy. No, I can be sad and happy at the same time. So it's that body scan. Like in the morning, I wake up and I check myself. Like, how am I today? How am I feeling? And like Annmarie said, like giving grace. If I'm having a day where, I mean, I can get triggered just going into the doctor's office and the doctor showing up late, and he can walk in, I'll be in tears, right? I never know what's going to happen, but if I can show up and give myself that grace of going, okay, today's gonna be a hard day. So today I'm not going to do as much. Like Annmarie was saying, like she processed it. I know we talked about earlier, we were having our session earlier today, and she's talking about how you shared, Annmarie, how I'm used to getting up at 6:30 in the morning, and now I'm barely able to get out of bed at 9:30 in the morning, right? So allowing yourself to understand that sometimes things have to fluctuate so that we can show up for ourselves the way we want to. And even if that means I got to sleep in a little bit later, or I got to get up earlier, or I got to cancel that meeting because you know what? I can't be 100% there. And just having the conversation with that person, it's important to do that. And I like that you talk about the body scan to do that because these things are real that the listeners, me, Annmarie, and you're watching us on YouTube, these things become real. And if we ignore it, they're just going to get bigger. But if we find ways to work through it and to help us heal through it, it can help us live as much of a harmonic life as possible. Because we know a mutual friend, Kari Hurd, her and I say all the time, you can't be completely imbalanced because there's always something that's going on in your world. But if you can find harmony with what's happening in your circle, then you can live a much better, less stress for the most part life. And I think that's important. So when you're working with your clients, we're going to talk about PQ in a little bit because I know you're bringing that in with your clients as well. But when you're working with your clients, what are some of the first things that you help them? Because I know, like with you, when you and I first started, it's overwhelming. You feel like I can't get this under control. This autoimmune is like, it's become my life and I don't want it to be about my life. What are some of the first things you do with your clients?
So the first thing I do with them is I drip it in to let them know that there is a different way of looking at things, especially our pain. I just talk about how, what once worked. Because, I truly believe that we all have experienced some sort of trauma. There's the big trauma, little trauma, and it stunts us. Not that we're little again, but it stops us from, somewhere along our journey, right? So I talk about just a little bit of, if we can just harness a little bit of strength in our fingertips and just rubbing them together and, being intentional about that. And that's what you did for me. You just kind of dripped it in. And that was doable. It was so doable. Um, but I think the best part that I've told them was that what served us when we were young, especially I can see exactly where my saboteurs come from that served me well as a child, that protected me, that are such blockers. It blocked me from a lot, and they still do, and I struggle with it. I'm not gonna say that I don't, but I've given myself time to figure it out that, okay, here it is. It's gonna be in my face. It's gonna slap me and say, no, you need to push through. You need to suck it up. And I have to rub my hands together, especially now I'm doing a lot of breathing. I feel my stomach, or I'll visualize like ahead of me just to be intentional to ground me. And I've also been doing the box breathing. Box breathing is really good for me also. but rubbing my hands, I've taught them that, just to bring them to realization that you're not alone. We all get stuck, but we don't have to stay there. We get to figure out what particular saboteur is the one highest on the on that totem pole. Where being the highest on the totem pole usually is the best, not so much with us.
And 100% being exactly. You don't need to be high on the totem pole all the time. We're going to talk about the PQ, and you guys can you're going to hear how you can go get the test as well. So I love you said be intentional and start small. Like that's so important because, we think about these goals, right? It's like, so for those of you that are in a business or think about starting a business, or even if you're in charge of a project, right? You know what the end game is. You have to start backwards, right? To get to there, which means you have to start with the small stuff before you can get to the big stuff. And so with this, you actually have to start small. You got to start small so that you can learn to live with the big stuff that comes in your way, because you can learn to live with things that are going to come up like a flare that's going to say, you can't go to your kid's ballerina or basketball or whatever that is, because guess what? You can't get out of bed and it's okay. Right. And you and I, one of the things you and I coached on is like communicating our realistic expectations, having conversations with those that love us, our jobs, or even our business partners, or even ourselves as an entrepreneur, to say, there's going to be a day that I'm going to be able to not go to something that's going to be the most important thing in the world. And I will do everything in the world. I promise you to be able to do that. And I have to have you give me grace that if I can't, it's okay. Right. Because we talk about self-care here a lot, and self-care is communicating realistic expectations with others around our personal self-care. And if we're not doing the things that we need to do to allow us to try to find harmony and start small, then we're not going to be able to show up for more things that we want to. But when you work with Annmarie, like she said, she's going to help you start small. She's going to help you baby step into those things. And I know you're working with a client right now. You don't have to share her name, but I know you're a very proud coach at her success too. And I know one of the things you brought in and you're starting to bring in with your clients too is what we've been talking about, the Positive Intelligence Program, which is an app-based program. And as Annmarie says, she mentioned saboteurs. It helps us to identify those things that tell us that you're not worthy. You can't do that. Oh, if you don't help that person, they're going to think you're selfish, or they're going to think you don't like them, or I'm not going to be able to help them fix something, right? Those judge and those saboteurs. So there's things, as Annmarie was saying, that you can do to sage those thoughts. There's things that we can do even in like quick seconds, just to, as Annmarie was saying, rub fingers together. And I asked Annmarie earlier today because she's in a flare and she's like, I can't rub fingers together. And I said, so what do you do when you have that, Annmarie? So now what we mean by rubbing our fingers together. So there are things that you can do to sort of, like Annmarie said, breathing, box breathing and things like that. There are things you can do. So if you're listening to us or watching us, I want you to take your fingers, your index fingers and your middle finger. I want you to rub them so hard together that you can just feel the ridges. And as I say it, I've calmed down. As you feel your ridges of the finger, right? If you guys heard in my voice, like my voice came down a tone, right? So feel those ridges. Just doing that and then doing some breathing. So deep breath in, let it out. Another deep breath in, let it out. Just doing that for like 2-3 minutes can calm you down. And I want to give you an example how important it is even for your kids. You can teach your kids that. When I was a few months ago, I was going out helping my brother. He was going through some health stuff, and I was helping him and my sister-in-law by helping watch to my nephew. We had a blast together, my nephew, Sean, and I. And he had something happen at school, and he got really anxious over it. And I taught him just to rub his fingers together really quickly. I just said, here, when this happens, just rub your fingers together. So a couple weeks later, I had to take him to the dentist. For those of you that are listening, I had to take him to the dentist. And at the dentist's office, they were going to have to pull a tooth. But before they did that, they had to give him Novocaine. I'm sitting down by his feet, just kind of rubbing his leg by his ankle. And I look on his lap, you guys, and he's rubbing his fingers together. So just that little thing that I taught him was able to calm him down. And so, Annmarie, I know you're doing that with your clients. What are you seeing happens with your clients when you can teach them tools like this and the box breath and stuff? What do you see happens with your clients?
They're more willing to hear what they're saying around their disease, especially when there's times you're in so much pain that all you want to do is cry. And that's not going to help you. I mean, yeah, give yourself that boo-hoo, but don't do the boo-hoo-hoo. And when I tell them when they're overwhelmed, just concentrate on it, and it'll ground you. And they understand grounding better than your saboteurs in the beginning. So I say grounding, and especially with this one client, she's very receptive to it, first of all, which is nice. And she doesn't want to be upset. And my client's favorite, every one of us say it, I'm just so tired. I'm tired of being in pain. I'm tired I can't go out. I'm tired I can't hang with my friends. I'm tired it takes me 45 minutes to take a shower. Wait, and now I got to get out of the shower. You're just tired. And I can't even say it's overwhelm. It's literally the energy that it takes sometimes is just too much. So then that'll allow you to go further. But if we get that thought of I'm tired, this will allow you to change the thought in that moment. And that, for me, especially for me, I know it works. I see it working on my clients, but I personally know that it works. Today, we were working today. You saw the frustration on me, and I was, rubbing my hands, trying to do something just to concentrate on that, opposed to crying.
Which for you that are listening and watching, that was a huge growth for Annmarie, because before we started working together, one little thing, we were looking at a Google Doc, we couldn't find it. It disappeared. Neither one of us know how the heck it disappeared. Usually I can be like, oh, it's right here. I couldn't even figure it out. And so Annmarie was like, she literally, the Annmarie I first started working with to the Annmarie today were two different reactions. The first time working together, she would have been freaked out. She would have been crying. She would have been so upset. This time she was doing exactly what she said. So she was like rubbing her hands together and just like breathing. So we're like, okay, worst case scenario, we've got most of the thing from my doc. We can bring it over and just tweak some things. And literally that's what we did. And I watched your growth, Annmarie, like to do that. And I think it's so important for those that are listening and watching to understand that little things towards growth can make a big difference when you have things show up in your life, whether it's a flare from RA, whether it's something doesn't go right at work and you've got to deal with that, or something's happened with the kids and you're like, oh my gosh, I need a Calgon take me away moment kind of thing. There's things that you can do that you can calm your thoughts and calm yourself down and work through and process what's happening. I love, like, when I work with my clients who are the I call them the stay-at-home, I don't like the stay-at-home mom. I call them the CEO mom, or that working CEO mom, the mom who works outside the house, has to come home and still run the house. And I call it a CEO mom because your house is a business. So whether you have littles or a spouse or a partner, you guys are running like a business. Who's doing what, managing like a business. And so sometimes my clients will say, yeah, but I come home, I walk in the door and everybody's there. I feel like I don't have time for myself. And I'm like, okay, before you pull in the driveway, park on the street over around the corner from the house. They don't have to see your car. Take 15 minutes. Turn your favorite music on. Do a little exercises like we're talking about here. Rub your hands together, fingers together, or get even crazier. Open up your door and stand outside your car and dance. Who cares who sees you? They're not going to see you again. And if they know you, they'll be like, yeah, let me come dance with you. Right. That's how I look at it. Right. Be afraid to stretch yourself, because if you make the time for self, and then you walk, and then you come around the corner and you pull in the driveway, you've had that time to process your day, release your day, and you can walk in feeling so refreshed. You don't have to walk in going, oh my God, I got to go in the house. I got to make dinner. All those thoughts that come in your head, right? You can kind of sage. I call it sage, which means kind of calm your thoughts. What do you think about some of that, Annmarie?
So it works on both sides. So I am home all the time. So I work out of the house. And when my husband comes in, I used to pounce on him. I'd be like, oh my God, I'm so glad you're home, blah, 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 blah. This is what's going on. I have learned that he needs that few minutes to get himself together to be back in the house. Years ago when we were first married, I'd bring him the martini. Hello. Well, we don't do that anymore. We've grown up a bit. But I see, just from my growth of knowing the 5 minutes that I need to grab myself together when I come home. and that's just even when I spend a day with my grandchildren. And it's been a wonderful day, but it's an hour and a half away, and I get traffic, so that alone could ruin the rest of the day. But I do give him like I've learned to see that what I need, I get to give also, and that to me was the biggest gift that I got, which then he saw, and then also took the course, and what a difference it made in our marriage. And I think that's the power of example.
And I love that you shared that, you saw and recognized how you would pounce as you said it, right? And he'd come in the door and it's like, wait, he has to process it. I understand now about the processing. And I got to meet Richard over the summer, and I love that you guys did the PQ together. I think it's just a beautiful thing. And if you guys are listening, we're going to put in the show notes how you also can get access to the survey and take the survey. But if you want information on what we're talking about, it is a mental fitness quiz. You take the quiz and it lets you answer it. There's no right or wrong answer to it, but you get to take the quiz and it shows you your score. Like for me, I was scoring high as a people pleaser, high achiever. I think it was risk taker. I scored in all the high in
Mm.
those. Now I can tell you my people pleaser has come down. Some of them, it's interesting how when you retake it, things change because you're working on these things. However, we're going to put in the show notes, but if you want that information, if you can't wait for show notes and you're listening to us right now, you can just text the word PQ to 813-449-3308. That's text PQ to 813-449-3308, and I'll get you the test you can take and see what your score looks like. So, it's, as Annmarie said, Richard's taking it. It's a great thing to do with your kids. Learn about your spouse or partner. It's a beautiful thing. And so I love that. So Annmarie, I'm going to shift us a little bit because
Okay.
you are a client. And so we have worked together and we've talked about your growth and everything. Talk to the person who is sitting and listening and are watching and is saying, oftentimes we hear about coaches this and coaches that. You got, there's so many things out there available to you. Why do you feel somebody should have a life coach in their life?
For me, especially, I have that squirrel brain. I have a squirrel brain. I want to get it all done, and I have emotions mixed into it. And sometimes I just need to vomit it all out. They catch the facts and bring it back to you. That's what works for me. But then there's the one that's at home and they don't know they need it. And they hear other people and they're curious. I say if you're curious about what a life coach is, you need to dabble. Get on a call with someone, whether it's myself, Pearl, or you've heard of other coaches, um, and just ask questions like what would benefit me? And while we're listening to you talk, we're going to see either that you are a people pleaser, or you're a controller, or you're hyper vigilant, or a risk taker, like Pearl was saying. And we'll ask you questions about like, how does that affect your life? Because if you don't know that you have all these, you don't know that you need it. So a call costs nothing. It's just a call, right? You don't even have to say yes. And that's the beauty of just finding out what a coach is. I spoke with Pearl twice before I signed up with her. And I'd had a coach before, and I had gotten so far. And I was doing weight loss, but I wanted to get to the root cause of why I was heavy, why I was unhappy, why things didn't feel right for me. And once I worked with her and PQ, which is why I am bringing it into my coaching practice, is that it's becomes much more personalized for the person. What you think you are, you find out you're not.
I love that that's exactly, that's one of the reasons why becoming a coach. And people ask, well, how do I find a coach, or how do I know what the right coach is? When clients come to me, one of the things I will ask them is, have you worked with a coach before? Because it's important for me to know if they have or have not. So I know how to structure how we work together. Because if you've not coached with anybody before, you're clueless of what's happened, we need to know what are your priorities? Like we do an evaluation together about Where are you at in your wheel of life? Where are you at with your health, your personal life? Where are you at with your relationships, financial? We look at all of that together, and then we prioritize and we start looking how do they intersect with one another, so we know where to work first, right? And so that's one of the things that I like to do. But if you worked with a coach before and you're coming to me, the first thing I ask is, why me? Because you've worked with somebody before. So now why did you switch coach? Did you, I want to know why. I don't lead into a reason why. I just want to know why they're making a change. And 9 times out of the 10, they will tell me that they work with me and they came to me because either they saw me on social media, they've talked to somebody like Annmarie, or they've met me in person and they know that I'm honest about my life. I don't do the things I don't coach for things I coach on that I haven't coached on myself. I don't know. I don't keep things that are happening in my life. When the loss of my son, even today, I'm still very transparent about the feelings that I go through. I've had people ask me, are you going to become a grief coach? No, that's not something I want to do, because I will guide that mom. I will sit with that mom and be like, this is what I felt. These are the things you're going to feel. These are the things people are going to say to you. And you're going to be like, no. And I'm going to say, yes, they're going to say these things, and I'm going to prepare you for that. But I don't want to be a grief coach. I want to be that coach that says things are going to come up in your life, and this is the things we can do to help you prepare for it. And I'm not going to be that imposter syndrome. I'm going to tell you I struggle with my health. I'm going to tell you I struggle in my relationships. I'm going to tell you I struggle with a relationship with myself. I'm going to be honest with you of that. But I'm also going to say, this is the tools I have in my toolbox to help grow and help work through it. Like when I started the Shira League, like every Sunday evening, for those that are listening, we have what's called the Shira League. We get together on Zoom. It's not recorded. It's women like Annmarie that come together that want to work on self. We celebrate the highs. We carry each other on the lows and anything in between. And let me tell you, when I started Shira League, I started that, Annmarie, because we're in the middle of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
I saw so many, especially women, that were going, oh my gosh, I have to be a teacher to my kids. And I send them to school. I didn't go to school to be a teacher. Oh my gosh, my spouse is home all day long, or my partner's home all day long. Like, I saw what I like to call the Calgon take me away moments, but I'm not allowed to leave my house. And so we started this self-care, 30-day self-care thing. And people were like, at the end of 30 days, what are we going to do now? So we just sort of kept going. And that's where the Shira League started. I did not know in 2020, when I started the Shira League, that I was going to need it in 2022 at the loss of my son. So that, to me, just wants to reaffirm everybody full circle. I, as a coach, need coaching too. I, as a coach, get coaching as well. And I need support. And that's what the Shira League does for me as well. And so somebody like Annmarie, like as you heard today, if you are somebody who is challenged with any kind of autoimmune, especially RA, we're going to put in the show notes how to reach you. I'm going to ask you in just a second too, Annmarie, but it's okay to reach out. People put this stigma on that I have to reach out for help. I have a therapist I go to. I am not ashamed to say it. I go see Rachel often, especially during different times in my life that things are happening, but it's okay to get help. We have come so far through COVID. There's so much that's been going on that mentally, mental health is a thing. And if you're sitting and you're listening to us right now and you're resonating with anything we've said today to you, just know that, like I said, you can read the show notes. You can click on the links in our show notes. You can also text, just like I said, at 813-449-3308 PQ, and we will reach out to you, because we want you to know you're not alone. That's why Annmarie does what she does. That's why I do what I do. That's why other coaches do what they do. It's so important. What do you want to add to that, Annmarie?
So for me, like, because she has the Shira League and the importance of the role that it has been in my life, I made the decision to have my own resilient living circle. And that is for women that are just like me. Like, I just got done taking care of my mother. My mother passed away a year ago. I was able to go there and talk about that. But I want people to come to my group so that they can talk about, like, oh my God, I'm in a freaking flare. How do I help my mother, my father, my sister, my children, and not feel guilty? And the highs and the lows, the same. I mean, the structure is so good. The circle, the camaraderie, the love that you're pouring into each other is so it's so needed. It's so needed. And again, it's not recorded. It is what it is. Well, that came through. And that would be my husband. I thought I had everything turned off, but this is like one big technical cluster. Anyways, but I know for me, I needed the Shero League. I also need my resilient living circle because then I get to be around my peers, my women like myself that have whether it's RA, lupus, MS, any autoimmune disease, chronic pain. It is hard to live with. And if you have someone else that's in that same space, you realize you're not alone and you can conquer so much more when you're in a group.
100%. Okay, so that leads us to tell everybody how they can reach out to you, how they find you, and we'll put it in the show notes as well.
So I have an Instagram, and I put my life on there. You'll see me on there from not looking so hot when my mother passed to me jumping at a trampoline park. I do my life. I show that you're living, and that would be RA_.advocate. Annmarie Entner, if you want to look that way. You can find me on Facebook. Just my name. I make it very simple. Annmarie, all one word, no E in the middle. But I think the best way to find me now is to get on a call with me. Get on a call and just ask the questions. And I can send you a link to get on here. And I'm going to give you a phone call, a phone to dial onto. It's 570-878-5300 and text warrior because we're all warriors, and I want you to find your people, just like I have my people to back me up. I need you to find your people too and watch us all grow together. And I have a webpage that is Life Coaching for Change, and you can get some tips on how to move forward with daily. But that is a freebie for sure. And it's a beginning to moving forward.
I love it. So we'll put that all in the show notes for everybody that's listening. Thank you so much, Annmarie. Now, everybody knows if you've been watching the show or listening, we do this great thing. But if you're new to the show, we have these cards are called Better Questions, Better Life. And our mutual friend, Annmarie and I have a really great friend. Her name is Carol Gill, and her friend, Diane Allen. They created these 70-some cards. So I have a half a deck here and a half a deck I take when I travel and do my podcast. So we're going to shuffle these cards. These cards have questions on here that are great for meditating in the morning, great for journaling, but we always use this card to help and ask and close out our show. So Annmarie, you're going to tell me when to stop shuffling, and we're going to see what the card says for you. So tell me when to stop.
Stop. Let's do a quick
Your
one.
card says, oh, we've been talking about this all day. This is so funny. How do I care for myself?
Stop. Pause. Evaluate. Grace, compassion, love, and take that next step.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. So listen there and do some pausing today. And I just want to thank you guys again. So if you are listening to us, make sure you leave us a review, like our podcast. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you click subscribe down below so you know when we're on here again. And I just want to remind everybody again, if you remember you come into this world, you can be a little rough on the outside. You might have some rough things you've gone through in your life, but as you open up your own personal oyster inside, you will find your inner pearl to greatness. And I hope today you were inspired to go out and start finding your inner pearl to greatness. Have a great day.